Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks, and don't forget to check out some of our recent episodes. And again, thank you to Everydayers catching each and every episode. So the receiver room for KU becomes a very interesting position group, one that lost a ton of production and talent from last year's team. I mean, Luke Grimm, LJ Arnold, and Quentin Skinner were basically 3-year starters for KU, and that's a lot going out the door. And now they've kind of overhauled it with different styles of player. Like, you think of Quentin Skinner was this elite deep ball player who made unbelievable catch after unbelievable catch. He was more of a straight line speed guy and had really good size. With LJ Arnold, he was more of your intermediate guy that could do a little bit of everything. With Luke Grimm, he was kind of a do-it-all guy as well, not as big-bodied as LJ Arnold. Maybe you think of him more as your go-to slot player, and he was the guy that Jalon Daniels had the best connection with. That goes back to his time back in 2020. Whenever Jalon was on the field, it was always Luke Grimm as kind of the main target, even in some of the seasons where maybe Arnold or Skinner had more yards than Luke Grimm. It was always, with Bean, his connection was always with Arnold and Skinner a little bit more, although, all three had connections in other ways. But now it's a group that has a lot more yard after catch guys. Specifically, you look at the top, the projected starters. I think Emmanuel Henderson, 6'1", 190 senior. He only has 5 career catches. Compare that, he has 9 career tackles from playing special teams at Alabama. But again, you're at Alabama. You're behind guys who are projected first-round picks down the road, day 1, day 2 picks. You were a former, top 100 recruit in the country as a running back. The question is going to be, that transition to receiver. How good are you at the refined parts of the game, making catches and stuff? When you get the ball in his hands, or before he gets the ball in his hands, he should be able to use that speed to really blow by DBs in a real way. I think he's going to have a huge season this year. Cam Pickett is 6 foot, 200-pound redshirt junior transfer from Ball State. He had almost 700 yards from scrimmage last year, over 800 all-purpose yards, 49 catches, another good player with the ball in his hands and yard after catch. Those are 2 guys that I think you can really trust and can make things happen with the ball in their hands, maybe better than any of the receivers that were on last year's KU roster, right? There's certain things that Luke Grimm and LJ Arnold and Quentin Skinner did better than I think the combination of Pickett and Henderson will do. But that's one key difference that I think both players are going to be better at than what KU had, and that'll help Jalon Daniels. It'll be some free given yards that those guys just kind of earn over the course of a play that you don't really plan for, that makes it easier to pad those stats in a real way. I think that receiver 3 starter probably, we'll see what happens when the depth chart comes out. Bryson Canty was probably the favorite to win one of those. He's the transfer from Columbia, 6'2", 205 redshirt senior, but he's been banged up in fall camp. And so does that prevent him from starting? It probably does. And I don't know how long, I don't know if he's still injured. I don't know if it's going to cause him to miss time in the season, but he's a very productive player. 17 touchdowns, almost 1,700 yards on 108 career catches in Columbia at 4 seasons. I hope he can get on the field and up and running, even if it's in the midpoint of the season, because he is somebody who could be a game changer for KU, but they need him to kind of get in the flow of things and get back and get healthy. Levi Wentz, maybe he takes advantage and starts because of the Canty injuries, but 6'2", 205, another kind of big-bodied receiver who wins contested catches, can do it downfield. He has 40 catches, 621 yards, and a touchdown last year at Albany, making the step up. He'll certainly get playing time. And then the other guy, your kind of big returner, Doug Emilien, 6'1", 190-pound redshirt senior, only 11 career catches, but he's had some fun ones. I certainly think of the one he had at Iowa State Names in 2023, and known as kind of being a good route runner as well. This is his final season at Kansas. We've seen Lance Leipold and staff, if things are basically a tie, like kind of give the nod to the upperclassman, to the senior guy, the guy who's been around the program. I think of Hayden Hatcher starting over Austin Booker at the beginning of his career, and we talked about that on Locked On Jayhawks, and how maybe that means they give the nod to Emilien to start things off right away. But again, I think it's going to be a rotation of guys playing. Then you have your battling for the 2 deep. I think Keaton Kubecka. I look at those 3 guys. Whoever wins the starting job, your 3rd starter. The other 2 on the 2 deep, and then your other 2 deep is probably going to be Keaton Kubecka, 6'2", 210, redshirt sophomore, was injured last year. Another bigger bodied receiver that has been helpful for KU on special teams in the past. And we'll see if he starts to, get ingrained in the offense, rotate in a little bit here or there, that we can see some flashes to be like, okay, we feel good about you being a starter in 2026. The other guy that would either go in the future to watch category or battling for the 2 deep, I'm not entirely sure because it's been a short offseason for him with KU and Lawrence, is Jaden Doss, 5'11", 190 redshirt sophomore, former highly recruited player from the nearby area, went to Nebraska, transfers over, another good yard after catch player, and it'll be interesting to see if he can crack the two deep. Maybe somebody who I look at is like on the Kobe Baines path. Kobe Baines transferred into Kansas from Louisville, another power, 4 university. Same with Jaden Doss coming from Nebraska, obviously very different positions. But with Kobe Baines, by the time, we got through midway to the end of that first year he transferred over, he wasn't, I don't think, on the two deep to start the year, but he started rotating in later in the season. Then he becomes basically a starter level player by snap count. You look at it for the next couple of seasons, and obviously he's a starter again on this year's team. I wonder if that would be the case with Doss. If he's not on the two deep to start, and then all of a sudden we get, past a midway point for Kansas, they're off a bye week, and then Doss all of a sudden starts rotating in here and there, and by the end of the season, he's playing a little bit more snaps, and then you feel good about him starting come 2026. That would not shock me with Jaden Doss. Other future players to watch: Bryson Hayes, Jaden Nickens, Tate Nagy, and Jackson Cook, all freshmen coming in, a 4-player freshman class. Jaden Nickens had the most recruiting ranking buzz on him. Bryson Hayes, a speedster in state. Jackson Cook, kind of your bigger bodied, downfield speeder from out of state, I think Georgia. And then Tate Nagy is your former quarterback from the Kansas City area, obviously the son of Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and somebody who is very quick and could profile into being a really good slot receiver. Then you also have Bryce Cohoon, Mac Moeller, Israel Moses V, and Donald Collier. I think those are all walk-ons on the team. So the biggest questions and storylines, I think, for this unit: what is that loss of production and experience going to mean for KU? I do think receiver is a position. In fact, we had Phil Steele on with us earlier in the offseason. Thank you, the Everydayers, if you already caught it. And he talked about the positions that you need experience versus the positions that it's not as important. He classified receiver as one of those that it's not as important. Just be athletic, catch the football, be good players. That matters a little bit more. I think that helps KU a little bit here. Now, on the flip side, what is having Jim Zebrowski and Matt Lubick mean for the receivers? I think on one hand, those guys are definitely going to stress, you have to be able to be a good blocker to be on the field. But it also means we saw Jim Zebrowski call plays in the UNLV game, and the KU3 receivers went off. I think this could be a little bit more receiver friendly than each of the last two offensive coordinators. In Kotelnicki's case, it was so spread out. It was tight ends getting heavily involved, running backs getting heavily involved. I think with Jeff Grimes, the receivers were definitely involved, but it wasn't necessarily to their skill sets. It was, we want to throw a lot of stuff downfield. We want to throw a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage. And this receiving core actually might be a little better at both of those things. But I think it's going to, be helpful for the receivers that's the offensive coordinator combo now for KU. And then, what is having that more yard after catch worth? Because you look at Cam Pickett's percentage of yards that he had on yard after catch, it blows by anybody that KU had on last year's team. Emmanuel Henderson should be able to do that. If you do play Jaden Doss, he should be somebody who is good yard after catch for KU. So, what does that matter? What's the flip side? What if there's less reliability of hands on this year's receiving core versus last year's? What is that worth in comparison between the two? But I think my final thought here on this receiver room is I actually think this is going to be a good unit for KU, and one that surprises folks nationally, who I think from a national perspective, or if you're, watching college football previews or listening to podcasts or reading preseason magazines, it's like, oh, they lost all this production from the receiver core. And all those players were fun and good and productive for KU, but I think they brought in good ones to replace them. And I think this unit's going to surprise people nationally. They're going to look up at the end of the day and be like, oh yeah, KU got really good production from the receivers they brought in via the transfer portal. So I do think this is going to be an underrated position for Kansas coming into the year, and we'll see what they can do in week 0 against Fresno State. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time with LOJ.